My name is Mabhena-Olagunju. I am the founder and CEO of DLO Energy Resources Group, which is an energy company that currently owns one of Africa's largest wind farms. I'm based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I got into the energy sector when I was a student at the University of Aberdeen. I went there to study oil and gas law. And at the time, South Africa was experiencing rolling blackouts. And as part of my research, I saw that there was a direct link between economic performance of the country as well as access to power. And I wanted to be part of the people that changed our continent or contributed to it, especially the economy. We have a wealth of resources on this continent, but our economies are constantly underperforming. And one of the key challenges is around power supply. Only 50% of businesses in Africa have access to reliable, stable power, and that obviously impacts on performance. What attracted me to the renewable energy sector was the fact that, one, I wanted to solve a problem, but two, I didn't see representation of people that looked like me in the sector. So whenever you hear about climate change, you are always hearing European voices and seldom African voices. And I think it's important that we are part of the conversation because this continent is going to be most affected by climate change policy, given that the continent generates most of its revenue from what are called hydrocarbon resources, right, like oil and gas, which are so-called big polluters, right? So it was important for me to also lend the voice to what Africans feel about climate change. We only are responsible for 2% of the world's global emissions, yet with the Paris Agreement, we are going to have to pay a heavy price. And it obviously affects our industrialization. So it's important that Africa is part of this discussion. Europe and the West industrialize using dirty energy sources, and now they are imposing on Africa this very how can I put it, punitive measure where it's meant to be zero emissions by 2050 without having consulted the continent in a way on how they can practically get to that stage. Africa currently struggles with electricity supply regardless of the source, right? So for me, I said it's important that African voices continue to be part of this conversation, not continue, start to be part of this process. The other thing in terms of how I handle being in a male-dominated environment, for me, I just show up as myself with my authenticity. And as long as you have knowledge on what you're speaking about, I think people can be prepared to listen, and where they are not, you make them listen, I suppose. But I've never begged for a position or audience. What I do most times is just let the work speak for itself. I think the reason the continent has been left out, I mean, generally is a global political one that currently always exists, that Africa is viewed as a source for raw material. And that's our only contribution on a global stage, right? But that's not it. We are the ones who are going to be most impacted by these policies. So we have to be part of this conversation. The world's biggest polluters are now telling us to clean up our act after they have built their economy on dirty energy. I'm not saying I disagree with the need for climate change. I'm saying the manner in which it's done and how Africa is involved is very, very important, right? I think it's important to say, how can we include Africa not only in the discussion, but have an understanding for how their economies are built on these hydrocarbon resources, such as gas. And for me, gas is still a clean energy source. And I think a combination between solar energy and gas equals to a happy marriage that serves both the practical realities of the African continent having a large source of gas supply, but also addressing climate change issues because it is a cleaner source of energy than coal, right? But I don't think the exclusion of Africa is going to be met well, because you are essentially asking African governments to abandon the resources that give it and its economies revenue without including them in the decision-making process. It's crucial that we start to be a part of this discussion. DLO Energy Resources Group is a pioneer because, one, we are 100% Black, African, female-owned renewable energy producer in this space. And I say that proudly because even at a global level, you do not see Black-owned renewable energy companies, period, right? And the second thing I think I'm most proud about with our company is that we own one of Africa's largest wind farms. We currently operate it. It is at 244 megawatts. And to put it in simple terms, we power over 200,000 homes in South Africa through that power project. The third thing I'm most proud about with DLO Energy Resources Group is we've actually just recently acquired an engineering firm. So we're building our in-house engineering capabilities. One of the things I've seen in my career throughout the renewable energy space is Africa does not own the technology and the IP and the innovations that is involved in renewable energy. And one of the things we want to do with this acquisition is create that world-class African renewable energy technology and innovation company that can start to export its know-how, its products, its services to the world. It's not fair, I think, that Africa continues to power the economies of Europe and the West by utilizing its technology, its services, its equipment. It's so important for our own economies here in Africa that we start to build, we start to engineer, and we start to innovate.